Wonderful to have you on the show today, Adam. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Really excited about today's topic. We spoke a bit about it off air right now, and I'd love to dive in straight into the core concept of design thinking. And I know you work a lot with design thinking, mostly UX, etc. But I'm curious, how do you feel we could apply maybe the mindset or the process of design thinking to entrepreneurship, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, at its core, design thinking it's a mindset. It's also a process. It has pretty defined stages and steps. So in that way, it can be applied to almost anything in your life. I mean, I've almost like thought of design thinking my life at times.
Okay, let's dive
But
into that. Screw just entrepreneurship. How do you design think your life? Take it on
yeah,
another
sure.
spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it always starts with user problems, right? So, you really have to start thinking intrinsically, maybe about your own life, thinking about the problems that you might be having, kind of conducting your own user research about yourself, and then the things that exist within it. And then, of course, the next stage is really coming up with some potential solutions, right? So, as we've finished this discovery, we've gathered some insights. Now we need to come up with solutions to our problems. But the design thinking mindset is always about curiosity and knowing that we don't have all the answers to the problems. And so we have to test them, right? And so as we start to apply these solutions, we're kind of testing them out. We're not sure if they're going to work. And if they do work, great. Like that's all right. We're going to adapt that. That's how our life will go on. But if it's not working, we may want to change the solution and try a different approach, right? So this kind of idea applies, of course, to your life, but it can also equally apply to the business that you're running. As you go through the different stages of entrepreneurship, you have lots of learnings along the way. I think anybody who started a business, can't help but think about how little they knew when they first started and how much they might know now. And I think if you start to take this curious mindset of design thinking, where you can always think about something as a user problem and frame it that way, and then try to, try different solutions, see what works, and being willing to adapt and pivot, right? This is like, I think essential to any entrepreneur, like anybody who gets stuck in a particular, mode of thinking. Frankly, like a bit, businesses talk about pivoting all the time, right? If you don't have that mindset and have the willingness to take that risk of maybe changing a direction, I think that's why a lot of businesses end up failing. So I don't know. I found it to be useful in both my personal life, my business, and then of course the work that I do, or my company does for clients.
Yes, I guess it's something I do without necessarily labeling it design thinking. It's all about experimenting, see what the problem is, trial, fail, rebound, learn, experiment again, etc. But it's true what you were saying, that many businesses fail to innovate or pivot or try something new because they're used to doing it that way, especially if it kind of is working. Like if it's not working at all, it's a red flag and you need to do something about it. But if it's
Yeah.
sort of working out, oh, this will do. But wait a minute, it could be this great. Why are we settling for here? I'm definitely guilty of that. I've definitely seen things that semi-work, and I'm just like, no, I need to find like a better version system, whether it's a system process in place or people I work with or how I work with them or whatever it is. It's like, wait a minute, this would be a way better way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of, I think that's also one of the big principles around design thinking is like trying to get to the best possible solution as opposed to like accepting maybe a mediocre solution. So, yeah, I agree.
Amazing. And what's like one area in your life maybe that you'd like to share where you specifically applied design thinking and what the outcomes were of that?
Oh boy. Trying to think of something like off the top of my head. Um, Yeah, I remember I had a really good story off the bat, and I'm now like forgetting it because I had told it one time a long time ago. Um, I wish I had a good one for you off the top of my head. I'll prepare one for the next time.
or if it comes to you as we speak. But overall, what you're saying is this feels to me like it's a mindset and process that you apply quite often. So it's sort of maybe one of your default ways of thinking.
Yeah, I guess like one of the areas that I've tried to apply um, deep thinking and maybe even design thinking, is really designing my life. One of the things, and I know this is a topic we'll talk about in much more depth, that I heard a long time ago from a friend of mine that I actually coincidentally met at a conference, and he was telling me that, he is moving his entire family to Spain. And I was pretty shocked by that because he was moving from South Africa, which is pretty far away place, all the way to Spain. A language that he and his family did not know, a culture that was new to them, job prospects were unknown and uncertain to them. And I was like, "Why are you doing it?" He was like, "Well, I'm designing my life," and I'm like, "That's really interesting. Like, tell me more. Like, what does that mean?" And so as I got into it with him, he said, "Well, look, I want to find a place where I can live year round. The weather's going to be great. It needs to be safe for me and my family." He found that South Africa was increasingly unsafe. I need a place where my job prospects are going to be stronger than where I'm at. I want a place where I can still be near the ocean because I really enjoy that. That's a big part of my life. I want a place where I can also work remotely and have access to the rest of the world and be more accessible and be able to travel more easily. And all these things got me thinking like, wow, like maybe I need to design my life. I feel like, this is a reset moment. And at the time I was working in New York City. I was, doing the 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 thing. Maybe it wasn't even 9 to 6, like, more like 9 to 8 thing. And, getting on the subway every day. And I always had this desire to travel and maybe become a digital nomad and eventually also start my own business. And after meeting him, I was actually at that pivotal point where I was on the verge of like deciding whether or not I should start a business. Because I had been doing a lot of talks, and afterwards, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, that's an amazing talk." And it was actually about design thinking and helping apply it in businesses. And like, "Can you come do this for me?" And I was always like, "Well, I have a job, I'm not sure." But it kind of was like the impetus to get me to start thinking about starting my own business. And he really tipped me over the edge and helped me, move forward and really start thinking about designing the life that I wanted. And it took me about 5 or 6 years to really truly get to that point. But yeah, I feel like I've now achieved some semblance of that.
Amazing. And as we were speaking off air before, you did live in Mallorca, you are living it, you are doing it. It's so wonderful when you can remember when that was still just a dream, still just a concept, still just a possibility, like, but I actually did it. No, it's a
Yeah.
wonderful feeling.
It's very rewarding. And I think it's really important to set goals for yourself. And I truly believe that people should design their lives. And I think that you know going back to the design thinking kind of theme here, I examined what my user problems were. What were the things that I was kind of lacking in my life that I wanted to get more of? And I figured out what those things are. I set them as achievable goals. I came up with potential solutions to solve those problems. And some of them worked, some of them didn't, some of them I adapted. And now here I am. It's been 6.5 years since I first started my business. And look, not everything is perfect just yet, but a lot of the dreams that I had hoped to achieve, which included more financial freedom, more ability to travel and see the world, more ability to work from anywhere I wanted, ability to live in a place that might be a different climate, or a place that maybe didn't have all the opportunities as the other places I had, but I could still do the same work I was doing. Yeah, overall, it just gave me much more fulfillment um, and joy in my life. And so, I feel like I've achieved a lot of those goals. And still there's always new goals to push towards.
Yes, there's always goals to push towards. And I love when you said that not everything was perfect yet. And I was thinking, I wonder if anything can ever be always perfect in one's own business, right? I mean, we can see life as a
Yeah.
whole sometimes can feel perfect when things are aligned, but definitely if I think of business, it's not, because as soon as you reach the next stage, you already see the next. So it's
Yeah.
growth and progress.
Yeah. It is indeed. Yeah.
I know you're really passionate about this topic of remote working. So maybe you can share a bit of your insights, like how does this actually work for you when you're living abroad? How do you manage to build your social network, have your routines, continue your work when it's sunny and there's palm trees outside? How do you maintain like a good sort of work habits, routines, processes in spite of moving around and being in different locations?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I mean, I'll be honest, it took a little time to get used to it. I remember when I first started the business, it was 10 a.m. I was like, man, I'm gonna go like to do like a yoga class this morning. Like I don't have to go to work right now, right? Like I did the things I was supposed to do, I think, and I'm gonna go to do this. And I was walking to the class and I had this absolute dread, this feeling of like, oh my God, like I need to be working right now. What am I doing going to like a yoga class? I really didn't allow myself like the freedom that I just had, kind of unlocked for myself. And I'll never forget that moment, but I will say that it did kind of help me start to think about how I needed to structure myself, right? How I would be working in my company. And for me, it was never about the time that you were working, right? It wasn't about not being at work at 10 a.m., right? It was more about being able to achieve goals, right? And I still maintain that to this day, and I maintain that with my staff. We do have working hours, like we set a very specific schedule where all of us need to work together in collaborative sessions, but then there's pretty much half the day for across multiple time zones from from California all the way to Europe, um, where people are working independently, right? And some of them cross over in those time zones, and some of them don't, right? They just work independently. They don't need to work with each other at those times. And so for me, the way that I've decided to like structure my days is depending on the time zone I'm in, because I do travel so much. Um, I try to make sure that there are 4 hours a day that are blocked off for meetings. These can be internal meetings or for external meetings. I don't allow scheduling unless I'm in a very stable place for a long time with a very specific time zone. I don't allow meetings to be scheduled beyond that. Like, no, there won't be 5 meetings in a day. There'll be maximum 4, right? If they're each an hour long, or maybe 8 if they're each half an hour long, right? And so that's kind of like how I structure it. I know that I'll have 4-hour blocks to work, no matter what time zone I'm in. Now the rest of the time, I'm structuring my day based on the quantity of work that needs to be done, right? And now that I've been doing the business for a while, I know what work needs to be done. We have very specific goals. I know how much time I'll need to achieve those goals. I'm not a big believer in like the hustle culture of like, you need to be at work at 6 a.m., and be there until 12 p.m. every single night grinding. Like, I don't know, like, I just don't believe in that philosophy. Like, that's like the Elon Musk school of thought. I'm not into it, right? Um, I've found a lot of success doing this. Maybe I'm not going to be a billionaire like Elon Musk, but I live a very comfortable life and I'm very lucky. And for me, that's what success looks like, right? Um, so yeah, that kind of, hopefully that gives you a little insight into like my kind of mindset and how I structure things. I do have goals. I do have a schedule every day. Every day can be a little bit structured slightly differently, but I hold myself accountable to get work done. I hold my team accountable to get work done in a reasonable amount of time, the amount of time that I think it should take to get something done. And as long as I set those goals for them and I check in and I monitor their work, if they need to go and do a yoga class during the day, great, go do that. Like if they need to go to a doctor's appointment or pick up their kids from school, right? Or maybe they just need a little me time, whatever it is, right? We allow them to have the flexibility to go do those things, right? But those who take advantage, like we know very quickly that that's happening, right? We're not idiots, right? Because we're always checking in, making sure that the work is getting done. So yeah, that's kind of our philosophy, and it's honestly been my philosophy, and it's something I've really worked hard at to help structure for my team, and it certainly can have benefits and drawbacks, which we can talk about in more depth. But so far it's worked well for us.
Yes, I love this philosophy of outcome based versus time based. I think if we force ourselves to work a certain amount of hours, how many of those hours are we actually going to be productive versus, okay, here's actually what I need to do, and here's the time allocated. Can I make it fit in less? Will it take me a bit more? A bit of flexibility around it. And also energy wise, because I noticed that sometimes my energy is super high, and so I'll do a la 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 la, and then sometimes it's low, and then sometimes things happen in life, or I have a tough coaching session, I need some recoup time, and then I'm not going to force myself to write another blog article, right? It's just like it just doesn't fit. And then the energy of it, reaching out to a client, the blog article, a LinkedIn post, whatever it is just not good if your energy is a bit off. So then it's go to yoga class or for a walk. But I was laughing because I can so resonate with that guilt. I took singing classes for a while on Friday lunches, and so then sometimes I would take Friday afternoon off, and so I would manage my whole week so that whole afternoon was off. And I was like, I can't believe I'm cycling to my singing lesson at 12. And it just felt so like, and I was like, no, but I actually did everything I needed to do. And it was actually a really nice transition between work and then switching off for the weekend. So it was quite good. Though I have been happy to have my Fridays back for work also, because I realized that my Fridays were a little calmer, which is why it was easier for me to take them off. But they were a great day for reflection, reviewing my whole week, reaching out clients, preparing my content for the following week. So I was like, it's kind of also good to work on Fridays. They're both good, but we need flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more about finding those pockets of energy. It's hard because, especially as an entrepreneur, you got to keep yourself motivated. There's a lot of times where like things are going bad, right? Frankly, and you're trying to deal with a lot, and it takes a huge mental toll on you, and that can really be a hit towards your motivation. And so I think there's a few things that I do, I think exercise or like having other outlets to be able to ease your mind and focus on other things is definitely like one thing that really helps. I mean, certainly exercise is just one of them, but it could be anything, right? Meditation, it could be singing classes, whatever you like, right? Do a hobby, and I think those definitely give you the energy and mental space to be able to, go attack the day. And then another thing, I was literally talking to my wife about this yesterday. I was like, I actually like to get dressed up, right? I actually, even though I'm sitting here, in my home, in my office, and I could probably be wearing, my underwear right now for all you guys know. I actually do try to get dressed up every day for work. And it just completely shifts my mindset and allows me to just feel really good about myself and feel like I'm ready to kind of like tackle a day and go to work. So, small tricks that I think are helpful, especially for those of us who work from home.
Yes, definitely working from home. I mean, this is one of the reasons I do work from like a co-working space, because it makes me dress up every day, be in a different space, commute there, and also 200% on what you were saying around meditation, exercise, so important. And I feel in general that as entrepreneurs and business owners, we must take care of our mental health, therefore our physical health. They're related. Because if you don't, it's like you said, when things go bad, it's not like if you're employed and you've got your salary coming in every month, you have a bit of a rough patch, you work a bit less, probably nothing will happen, right? It depends, but and then you just go up again. But as a business owner, you can't be like, oh well, I don't feel like it, or get sick for 3 weeks, or get super demotivated. And I'm like, no, this is just not happening. So as soon as I feel I might get sick, I'm like lemon and ginger galore. I go to bed super early. I get up a bit late. I'm like, better miss 2 hours of work than two weeks, and etc. etc. And so there's a higher consciousness or higher value on physical health and mental health. I think what you have.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's you know, I think obviously important to take care of yourself by doing things for yourself. But, you know, I think one of the things that I also did, you know, probably about, it took me three years to really realize this. And frankly, we were at a crossroads in the business where we were starting to actually earn, you know, a little bit of extra money. And I was like, wow, I'm finally at the point where I might be able to make my first hire, which is a huge decision for a business. And it just felt so overwhelming. I'm like, do we have enough? Am I taking a huge risk? I'm playing with somebody's life here. I need to like consider this deeply when I'm making this hire, because what if I can't pay them? You know, like what if the business does poorly? Oh, like there was just so many emotions around it. And I ended up deciding to hire like a business consultant to help me really analyze our business and determine like the health of it, and determine if we truly had enough money to afford this and if it was like a worthy risk. And you know, this person helped me figure that out. That was problem number one. But you know, as it turns out, you know, there were a lot of issues that we needed to resolve inside of the business. And then I maintained this relationship with this person. And even to this day, we meet once a week to discuss business challenges. And it's almost like it's part like of course like strategic, and we obviously do a lot of work together and it helps move the business forward, but it's also kind of like part, you know, therapy session where I can like let go of a lot of my emotions, and also let someone to that's not as going to be as biased and critical to like think critically about the scenarios that we're going through, and let me not get emotional about them and make emotional decisions. And which, you know, I made many mistakes by making emotional decisions in the business. So I really encourage people who start a business to maybe even consider finding that type of person early on and investing in that relationship, because I do think that it is incredibly impactful.
Yes, I mean, yes, obviously, I mean, I also work as a coach, so I help people with these types of things, but also I have worked with so many coaches, maybe 8 or 9 by
Mm.
now. And I mean, there's no way I'd be where I am. I mean, I probably would have quit if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't have someone like holding my hand and be like, this is the next step, and congrats, that was great. And me being like, why is nothing working? And then they'd be like,
yeah.
I remember my coach, Louisa is amazing. If you're listening to this, that I've recommended to many people, Louisa Ferrario, amazing coach. And I remember her telling me at one point where I was going through a rough patch, and me saying, but why, you know, didn't it work for so long, etc. And she said, but maybe you needed this phase to prepare you for what's coming next. And I thought, oh, yeah, I didn't see it that way. And then it's true that when everything picked up a lot, there was a phase where I felt overwhelmed because I had too much work, right? It's like always the juggle of like nothing's coming in. Oh my God, I'm both bored and stressed out. And then too much is coming in. I'm overwhelmed. I'm grateful too, but I'm overwhelmed.
It
Anyway,
is
in
so
that
that
phase,
balance.
I remembered what she said, and I was like, oh yeah, that prepared me for this, because now in this phase of overwhelm, I'm able to shift to gratitude and be like, wow, I'm thankful I have too much on my plate. This is amazing. And then I just need to
Yeah.
manage it. So it did help.
Isn't that the roller coaster of running a business? And both why it's so awesome and so challenging at the same time. But I don't know, it's like a drug for me, and I love it, you know?
Yeah, same. And I feel it's a balance of so many things all the time. I was thinking about the balance of overconfident, underconfident. Things pick up and then you become almost sometimes overconfident, and then something hits, and then suddenly that confidence that you build, and then suddenly you're like underconfident, filled with self-doubt again. And you're like, can't I meet like confident and humble regularly? Is that not a thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, just to wrap up, I mean, I love this topic, and we deviated a bit from remote working, but we stayed on like entrepreneurship. What would you recommend to people who are maybe thinking of taking that leap that you took years ago? So aside from hiring a business consultant or a coach, which I agree is an amazing investment of time, energy, and money, but
Yeah.
aside from that, what would you recommend them to do if they maybe want to explore a bit more, be open to this idea of remote working and traveling, maybe having their own business. Like, speak to the Adam who was on the verge all those years ago.
Well, I suppose I'd give myself the advice, people gave me, which was like, you just got to try, right? What is, I think one of the biggest hurdles for people to get past is, well, what happens if I fail? Like, failure feels like almost like the end of the world, to I think a lot of people, and it's one of the reasons people don't start to begin with, is the fear of failure. And I think, for somebody who maybe embarking on entrepreneurship for the first time, look, you should be calculated about it. Don't be an idiot. Don't jump into things that you can't financially afford. I always tell people, make sure you've got like 6 to 8 months, of money saved in the bank, and like a very clear like strategy and runway of like your approach to doing this. And like, if at the end of this period, let's say like you've got 8 months saved, or let's say 9 months saved, and you say, all right, well, if at the end of 6 months I can't do this, like the business is failing, I'm going to stop and have 3 months that I can go find a job with the savings that I got, right? And so, that's, I know, a very tall order for somebody to save 8 months worth of salary or like living expenses. And so being, prepared for that moment, I think, is critically important, and not being irresponsible about it. The second thing, as I said before, is really being willing to take that risk, right? And so the first step is just, I think, putting yourself out there and trying. And then as you go, you're likely going to make some pivots. When I first started the business, we were kind of more of a consultancy. We were helping training people on design thinking and teaching teams how to apply it in their organizations. We're doing workshops and stuff. We pivoted actually to doing, product design work and applying design thinking in an agency environment. And then 3.5 years later, even though we did that very successfully, we had to do another pivot. And now we actually offer staffing, recruiting, and studio services for UX talent, right, that companies want to hire. So those are like 3 very different businesses. And we have pivoted 2 times in our, 6.5 years. And we've reached a point where now the business is, I think, thriving, or at least growing, that we never would have achieved had we not taken those risks. So, if you're going in the entrepreneurship, pool, be ready to make lots of changes and be open-minded about taking, sometimes big risks.
Yes, sometimes regularly big risk, and it often feels to me like I'm pivoting every 5 seconds. I have to keep that balance. Again, it's the whole balance thing of stay a while in one lane to really try it out, and then pivot, and then spend a while in that lane and really try it out, and not change all the time, which is another risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Adam. This has been wonderful. Really enjoyed our interview. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate you having me.